Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
We're going to be talking about PTSD and suicide. It's a very important topic. As you know, there was a suicide here not long ago, and that same week, 3 at Department of Corrections committed suicide in different facilities. So it's very pertinent, very timely. But before we start, I would like for us to have a moment of silence. Maybe you don't know, but Deputy Jimmy Tennyson in Maury County died last Saturday. He was in a car wreck on Friday and died Saturday morning. I went to the visitation last night, and it's a sad thing. He's being buried about the time that we end our class here today. But keep his family in your thoughts and prayers, if you would. Let's have a moment of silence. Thank you. The topic is plain talk about PTSD and suicide. When we leave here, I want you to have a good understanding of what PTSD is, what can cause it, and what we can do to help. When 911 needs 911, everybody looks at people that work in the criminal justice system as impervious to stress. But that's the least likely of everything, because our guys definitely experience stress. This is what I want you to remember. Invisible wounds can kill. If you're out on the road and you pull up on an accident and you see smoke coming underneath the hood, well, you know you've got to get the driver out of there, because where there's smoke, there could be fire. And so you break the window. Why? Because today we've got auto locks and the car's still locked. You reach in to get the door open and you cut your arm. Well, what happens when the paramedics get there? They'll take care of the victim, but they'll take care of you too. They'll make sure you go to the hospital, that you get that wound cleaned, that you get it stitched up. But what happens if after you get the driver out, you look in the back seat and there's a dead child? Children really impact us hard. And you know what? That's called an emotional wound. It's invisible. You can't see it. There's no blood, but it can be just as deadly. Because if you've got a cut on your arm and you say, I don't worry about it, I don't need anything, just put a Band-Aid on it. It could have been infected. If it's infected, it could get worse. It could turn into blood poison. It could turn into gangrene. You can lose your arm. Worse, it could kill you. Well, the same is true with those invisible wounds. If you have an invisible wound, if you've got an emotional scar from an incident that you witnessed, you can spiral down. You can get involved in addictions to try and mask that, to try and take away that pain. You may end up committing suicide. Every 17 hours, somebody in our work commits suicide. My name's Rob Michaels. I'm the CEO and founder of Serve and Protect. I was with the 229th Military Police Battalion in the National Guard. I was with Norfolk Police as a detective. I'm a chaplain with the FBI and state chaplain for the FOP.
I know you.
Well, hi there.
Yeah, we know you.
See, I know a couple of people in here. Every 17 hours, somebody in law enforcement commits suicide. Now, there is an organization that'll tell you that's not true. There are no more suicides in law enforcement than there are any other profession. Do you know how they get their statistics? By the GBY method. Google, Bing, and Yahoo. They rely on the web to report all law enforcement suicides. Guess what? It's inaccurate, because in a lot of cases, they're not reported as suicide. Every now and then I'll get a report of an officer dead. Not officer down, officer dead. He died on such and such a day. Now, if it was natural causes, it would say he died of natural causes or of an illness. If he was killed in the line of duty, it would say that as well. When it says nothing, that's very suspicious. So the fact is, in this statistic, the statistic every 17 hours was done by a guy named Dr. Jean Larned. He worked with the FBI and the Behavioral Analysis Unit. I'll support his statistics before I will Google, Bing, and Yahoo. And firefighter suicides rising sharply. 75% of officers have been divorced, 87% of firefighters, and that's divorced at least once. 40% of first responders are involved in domestic violence. It's interesting, 3 or 4 years ago, San Francisco elected a new sheriff. And 2 weeks later, he got arrested for domestic violence. His wife said, "Oh, that wasn't domestic violence. He was just shoving me around." That's domestic violence. Here in Tennessee, if the police are called by your spouse, if there's any kind of an injury, if there's any sign of a fight, somebody's going to jail. It's just that simple. 85% of first responders and 35% of dispatchers experience some symptoms of PTSD. Why dispatchers? That's right. They're the ones that get the call. They hear the wife in the background screaming for help or saying, "Help my baby," or any of those things. And yet they don't even know what happened in the end all the time. They're just left hanging. I'm going to tell you that 85% is a misnomer, because I believe 100% of people that work in this profession have some symptoms of PTSD, and we'll get into that. Look at what everybody experiences. You guys see that? What causes PTSD?
Traumatic experience.
That's right. You're right. Sheriff's deputy kidnapped and raped on her way to work. Now this is a favorite for me. This lady here is over the Citizens Review Board in Chicago. She's decided that it's too rough, too high a hurdle for a complainant to sign their name if they complain on somebody in law enforcement. So in her mind, people should just be able to make anonymous complaints. Now, when that happens, it ruins the career. Because all of a sudden, you're blamed of wrongdoing. That's on page 1. When you're cleared, it's buried by the obituaries. Nobody knows. And if they do know, they think it's a cover-up. They don't trust it. Anybody in our profession should have the right to face their accuser, to know who said what, to make sure there's a just and fair investigation. County executive responds to 41 deputies retiring. In that particular county, they were deciding that on a Monday, they were going to change the retirement package. So on Friday, 41 deputies walked in, put their badge on the desk and said, "See ya," and they retired under the previous. San Jose officers living in RVs outside the department. Their officers were working 17-hour shifts because they couldn't get enough guys to join, I'm using that term generically, people to join law enforcement. Why? Think about the last few years, everything the criminal justice world has been involved in, accused of, and really harshly criticized. So people are going, why do I want to be a cop? Why do I want to work in that environment? The Ferguson effect. You hear about that a lot. This particular police officer was beaten because she would not pull her weapon. Why? She was afraid that somebody would have a video camera working on their phone and embarrass her department, and put her in a bad place. So she refused to take appropriate action and was beaten in the head with her own weapon. South Carolina chief was charged with murder in a shooting. I know about this case because I helped that guy. We got a call from the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund. They're a great organization, and they help people in law enforcement who have been wrongly accused and can't afford to get a lawyer. They'll look at your case and see if they think they can help you. They took his case. In this particular instance, this is 3 years after Ferguson. 3 years. He was acquitted by local, state, and federal authorities. He was involved in a shooting. It was justified. 3 years after he was cleared, a new prosecutor came to town and said, let's charge him with murder. 3 years after being cleared, he was charged with murder. Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund got involved, and what ultimately ended up happening is they reduced the charge to a misdemeanor. Now, what does that mean if you're charged with murder and they reduce it to a misdemeanor? Means they had nothing to begin with, because there's not one prosecutor that would drop a murder charge if it was just a misdemeanor. But it was for PR purposes. The riots in Ferguson, and here's what I want to tell you. No matter where it is, we all feel what happens in other jurisdictions. When police, firefighters, corrections officers are involved in issues, when they get killed, we all feel it. In Baltimore, that's of particular interest because the judge that acquitted all 6 men had a history of prosecuting and convicting police officers. Very aggressive at it. So for him to say they're all acquitted, there was no evidence there. There was nothing that they should have been charged with. Was it a tragedy? Absolutely. But there was nothing for them to be charged with. Now, I love this. Y'all know who that is? That's Mayor de Blasio up in New York. He spoke to law enforcement and he says, if you're in a stressful situation, the best thing to do is close your eyes and count to 10. Raise your hand if you think that's a good idea. You're facing a suspect. You're in the jail and the guy's coming after you. It's stressful. And if you stand there and just start counting to 10, do you think that person's going to say, now there's a fool? Yes. That's a bad idea. But you see, that's what people in authority are saying. 2 Boston police officers shot. You see, like I said, when any of our brothers and sisters are injured, wounded, killed, we all feel it. The Dallas ambush. You know, one of the nicest things I saw out of that, there was a lady that was at the protest, protesting the police. And when the shooting started, an officer fell on top of her and shielded her with his body. He got shot and she did not. She was thankful that that man saved her life. Again, the Ferguson effect, another beating because didn't want to draw the gun. Now this is the same thing in Houston that happened up north. 124 officers and administrators are considering quitting because they're going to change the pension plan negatively. You see, recently, the state of Tennessee had a bill before the House to provide PTSD and mental health provisions for law enforcement and firefighters. They went to the Health Committee. The Health Committee decided we don't have enough money for everybody, so let's just cover the fire department. Police can come later. We'll do a summer study on it. So they're not covering police or anybody in law enforcement, which would include you guys. It also provided protections against adverse reactions if you claim post-traumatic stress. This is a good one. Indiana. Everybody on the department quit. It was 9 people. You know why? They had 1 bulletproof vest. Right, and they wouldn't buy any more. I mean, I can imagine that call. Hey, Fred, have you got that vest? I'm over here in a shootout, and I could certainly use that. I mean, that's a little silly. When I was with Norfolk, I happened to have one of the rare bulletproof vests. It was a nasty, one of those thick old sweaty ones, and we got a call. And they said that this guy wants to kill himself. So I got out there and I put on my vest and I walked up to the door, and here's this guy with a rifle under his chin. And I said, "What's going on?" He said, "I'm going to kill myself." I said, "Why?" "Well, my girlfriend broke up with me and left me alone." I said, "You do know where you are, right?" "What do you mean?" "You're at the beach." I mean, just on the other side of that house there is sand and girls. And you go kill yourself because one of them left you alone? I said, tomorrow morning, wake up, go out on the beach, and enjoy yourself. Well, he ended up putting the gun down, but before he did, the hair on the back of my neck was standing up. Something wasn't right. And I looked over my shoulder. All the guys that were there with me had their guns drawn and pointed right at that doorway where I was standing. And I turned around and said, "If you guys don't mind, if you hear a gunshot, let me hit the ground before you start shooting, because I don't want to die in all of this." We ultimately got the guy to come out. Gangs making death threats. Baltimore police officer shot in the wrist. Ambush shootings. Last year, 64 police officers died in the line of duty by gunshot. Not totally the number for line of duty deaths. That was, I believe, 134. A third of all line of duty deaths were by ambush, that were by gunshot. A third of them. Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. That sends a bad message. The Baltimore malicious prosecution, she's actually facing legal proceedings with her law license. And then on the right is a painting that was hung on the walls of Congress. It was taken down, it was put back up. It has now since been removed. That's not the place for a piece of art raised in protest. The art's fine if they want to do that. That's up to them. But you can't put it in a public place that is for all the people. Now, this is shameless self-promotion. We have a mobile app and it's free. If you go to our website, you can download it. You can get videos, all kinds of information. It costs you nothing. Just go to our website, serveprotect.org. You scroll down and you'll see it. You click on it. It's available in either Apple or Android. The potential impact. The first I'm going to talk about is compassion fatigue. Then the cast iron shield, emotional desensitization, acute stress disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and PTSD, delayed impact. I like this cartoon. Those traumatic calls never got to you, do they? You're a rock. And meanwhile, the bomb is ticking. Compassion fatigue. When you came to the job and you started meeting people in cells, you felt like maybe you could help them. There may be 2 or 3 that you go, you know what? This actually is a nice person. They just got in a bad situation. But the more you try and help, the more you see it's hard to really make a difference in somebody's life. And all of a sudden you start asking yourself, what's the point? That's compassion fatigue. It's burnout. It's a state experienced by those helping people or animals in distress, and it could be either way in the environment that you guys work in. But it's an extreme state of tension and preoccupation with the suffering of those being helped. It's caring too much can hurt. You know, when you really want to help somebody and it doesn't work, it makes you feel bad. It makes you feel like, what else can I do? Maybe I could do more. Compassion fatigue is caused by empathy. You start identifying with the person, and maybe there's something I can do. Maybe you think, well, that could be my daughter, that could be my son, that could be my mother. And so you want to help. It's the natural consequence of stress resulting for caring and helping traumatized or suffering people. Compassion fatigue is often triggered by situations in which you think your actions might help, and experiencing problems with the system. Do you ever wonder about how you can handle all of this because of jail overcrowding or insufficient resources or inadequate funds? All of those things start coming into play. How can I do my job if I don't have the right tools, or if we don't have the right people or enough people? If you've had personal issues such as inexperience or inadequate energy, overlooked serious symptoms. So, the symptoms of compassion fatigue: mentally, lowered concentration, apathy, disorientation, emotional. You feel powerless. You feel anxiety and guilt and anger, numbness. Behavioral, you get ticked, you withdraw, you can't sleep. Spiritually, you question life's meaning. And physically, you might have sweating, rapid heartbeat, breathing difficulty, aches and pains, dizziness. Now, authentic and sustainable self-care begins with you. For compassion fatigue, if you start feeling these things, here's some things that you can do. Be kind to yourself. Instead of beating yourself up, I could do a better job. Well, maybe not. Maybe you're doing all you can. And sit down and talk with somebody and say, is there something I'm not doing? Am I missing something here? And they can help you understand, no, you're not missing anything. We all feel that way. Enhance your awareness with education. If there is a way to improve your skill set, great. Accept where you are on your path at all times. In other words, is it possible for you to do more? Or are you in a circumstance where that's all there is? Understand that those close to you may not be there when you most need them. You can't always rely on everybody around you. You might want to, but you might not be able to, so you've got to be strong in yourself. Listen to others who are suffering. You know, there's the old saying, if you want a friend, you've got to be a friend. You know, if you're struggling and you see somebody else struggling, you might help each other out. Express your needs. Clarify your personal boundaries. If at work you're being bullied, if you're being mistreated, you have the right to say, this isn't appropriate. I don't feel comfortable if you say this or do this. Take a positive action to change your environment. The cast iron shield. In the world that you work in the world that I worked in, you see things that you cannot unsee. My first fatality that was significant, every fatality is significant, but there were 5 people killed in one accident. They had been to see a group, and a music group, and they were on their way back. When I broke the window to get into the car, I almost got stoned. I mean, they were smoking some stuff. And they hit a stanchion this big around, and it drove the motor back into the car. The 5 that died, it snapped their necks. Instantly, their heads were laying back, not a drop of blood, and the girl in the middle had her legs crushed. Now, the cast iron shield makes us different. Once you see these kinds of things, you might think or say things that other people on the outside might think, well, that's cold. We drove around. I was with my field training officer. I was a rookie. And we drove around after the accident was cleared. And we drove back. And I said, there's a blanket laying on the median. He said, well, get out and get it. So I lifted up the blanket, and there was a body underneath. This guy was a Marine. He'd seen a few things. So he got on the radio, and he called the rescue unit, and he goes, y'all left a blanket here. And they said, well, can you throw it in the trunk? He said, sure. What do you want me to do with that body? Well, they weren't real happy that that went over the air. But the point was made. They came back and got it. But the point I'm making, it's a shield that, in my opinion, is a God-given defense mechanism. You can't do what you do if every time you see a tragedy, you break down and cry. You start building up an emotional callus. It's compartmentalizing those feelings. But you can't do that but so long. It keeps your emotions in check, but when you go home, you can't take off that shield. So the point that I'm making, it's not like you only have that shield when you're at work. When you go home and your spouse says, hey, I need you to cut the grass. Can you do that? Or can you run up to the store for me? And you go, no, not now. They don't understand that. They don't understand what you have felt or what you have been through. So common reactions to trauma: a distortion of time, sensory distortions or tunnel vision, perceptual or behavioral distortions, a sense of helplessness, limited choices, feelings and impact of your fight or flight response to the incident. Fight or flight means your mind's focused on that incident, and it's either get out of here or be in trouble. Disturbance in your memory, hyperarousal, Broca's area. That helps put thoughts and feelings into words. When you've been involved in a trauma, you might not be able to describe it as you want to in your mind. The words may just not come. Words fail to capture the experience. According to the DSM-5, which is the psychiatrist's dictionary that defines everything they believe can be wrong with the human emotion, highest rates of PTSD are found among survivors of rape, military combat, first responders, and captivity. So pre-trauma risk factors could be family instability. If you came from a dysfunctional family, you may be more likely to be suspect or subject to emotional issues. Family history of psychological issues, multiple early losses, and by that I mean you lose people or things that are really important to you. Maybe it's moving a whole lot, and maybe it's the death of family members that you cared about. If you had trouble with authority growing up, genetics, the absence of social support, earlier depression or anxiety, early substance abuse, or ineffective coping skills. When you get into a bind, you don't know how to react. What is PTSD? It's a mental health condition that's triggered by a terrifying event. And this is important. It is a normal reaction to an abnormal circumstance. Most people never see somebody hanging in a cell. Most people don't have somebody spit on them when they walk by, or throw feces at them, or hurl insults at them, or threaten their life, or attack them. It's a normal response to an abnormal circumstance. It's an emotional wound. Many develop mental disorders other than PTSD, and we'll get into those. The DSM-5 expanded the criteria: re-experiencing or intrusive thoughts. You might be sitting around your house or driving in your car, and all of a sudden, something that happened before that was traumatic flashes back. You think about it. Maybe it's a smell that triggers it. Maybe it's a sight or a sound. Avoidance. You don't want to be around anybody or anything that reminds you. Negative alteration in cognition and mood, meaning it changes your thinking patterns and your behavioral patterns. In layman's terms, when someone either is engaged in or witnesses a traumatic event, the incident first processes the short-term memory, and in time processes the long-term memory without further issue. I might run into you guys 5 years from now, just like my brother over there did. Oh, I know you. Well, that's long-term memory. Now, he's not walking around every day going, that daggone Rob Michaels is in my head and I can't get him out. That's when trauma occurs, is when Rob Michaels is in your head 24/7. I can tell you that right now. But the point being, most of the time, most of the issues go on to long-term memory. It's those short-term incidents that get stuck in your short-term memory, the traumatic incidents, that cause the issue. If it gets stuck in short-term over time, weeks, it might trigger acute stress syndrome, like anger, sleeplessness. It might present in one of three ways. Anyone who experiences a traumatic incident, assault, domestic violence, bullying, an accident or significant injury, sudden loss of a loved one, witness of a violent incident, onset of a catastrophic medical condition. You know, you don't have to be in one of the professions that we cover to experience trauma. I can tell you right now, rape victims are traumatized. Those people who stood there on the streets of New York City and saw that building come down, saw the people jumping out the window, they were traumatized just as much as any of us could be traumatized. PTSD symptoms, hypervigilance. That's when you're on guard. You're always looking in the rearview mirror. You're always checking your doors to make sure they're locked. Anger or rage can be one. Sleep problems, anxiety, depression, relationship issues. That could tie in with the 75% divorce rate. Social withdrawal, potentially suicidal ideations, and being angry with God. Now notice, addiction is not one of the symptoms listed. Addiction is not a symptom of post-traumatic stress. It can be a byproduct. Now, some years ago, I went out to Colorado, and I met with a counselor. And I was sitting there talking with him, and at the end of our conversation, he looked at me and he said, "Well, you might just be the most emotionally shallow person I've ever met in my life." I said, "So I'm good at something." And he looked at me and I said, "What did you want me to do, cry?" Because I told him about things that I had seen. He said, "It wouldn't hurt." I said, "Ain't gonna happen." Because emotionally, that part of my life is closed off. To this day it is. I still don't cry. Acute stress disorder is most often diagnosed when exposed to a traumatic event in which both of the following were present. The person experienced, witnessed, or was confronted with a traumatic event. Actual or perceived. Though not required, the person's response is likely to involve intense fear, helplessness, or horror when you're subjected to the following dissociative symptoms: numbing or detachment, reduction in awareness of surroundings, derealization, depersonalization, dissociative amnesia. Now, acute stress disorder normally happens more quickly. Post-traumatic stress is typically diagnosed within 6 months. So acute stress disorder might be the diagnosis if you go in and it's only been a month or so. They might say, "Well, you've got acute stress, so let's address those things." It's natural to feel afraid during and after a traumatic situation. Fear triggers many split-second changes to the body. It's the fight or flight. And it's a typical reaction meant to protect you from harm. Animals are this way. I love to feed deer. We've got deer that come up outside of our house, and I'll go out and I'll put grain out there for them. But if I walk around the corner and they're already there, they scatter. They'll run down to the driveway, waiting to see what I'm going to do. That's fight or flight. So that's the fight or flight reaction. Nearly everyone will experience a range of reactions after trauma. PTSD, delayed expression. About a quarter of PTSD cases is with delayed onset. During the interval between the trauma and the delayed PTSD onset, some symptoms are likely to occur. But when the delayed onset happens, you have the symptoms we mentioned with PTSD. It can be explained from pre-existing trauma-related and post-traumatic factors. Now, here's one of the things to keep in mind. When people go in and speak with a therapist, when they get to talking and opening up, well, the specific incident that brought them there may not be the only thing that is bothering them. It might be something that happened in their childhood. Maybe they're veterans. Do we have veterans in here? Yes. See, you guys have seen stuff apart from what you see now. So you may be bringing in some traumatic incidents into this job. My understanding is about 20% of those in law enforcement are in fact veterans. So you may have things, baggage you bring in to the situation with the current situation that you have. What causes PTSD? Not all who experience the same trauma develop PTSD, but constant exposure can develop some symptoms. Now, there's a situation going on in Nashville right now. 2 years ago, a police officer was involved in a shooting. There were 4 others with him. The other 4 have no problem. This officer has struggled with PTSD, was diagnosed with PTSD, significant trauma, and the therapist said he shouldn't go back to the job. So he goes before the city's disability commission. They tell the story, they tell what's going on. The chairman said, when you took that job, you knew that you might have to shoot somebody, didn't you? Yeah. Well, then it's not PTSD, it's just part of the job. I'm going to say right now, she's ignorant. Because knowing that you might have to shoot somebody is far different than shooting somebody. You might date a girl, but that doesn't mean you know what life will be like married to her, does it? No.
That's PTSD.
I'll remain silent on that one, brother.
That's the key. Look at the grandmother.
So the point that I'm making, the other 4 people didn't struggle with what happened. Why? I don't know. They just did not. Everybody responds to trauma differently. Emotional trauma is a normal response. So when you feel this, don't let anybody say you're weak or that there's something wrong with you emotionally. Too often, some administrators will marginalize post-traumatic stress. We helped a guy in Florida. President Obama came through in West Palm. This particular officer was on patrol, was on the parade route. He looked and one of his co-workers was on a motorcycle. A pickup truck literally ran over the guy and stopped on top of him. The officer crawled underneath the truck and was holding on to his friend, not going to leave him alone. Oil was dripping, gas was dripping. So, after everything was cleared up, he said, I need to go see somebody. I'm struggling with this. I can't get this out of my mind. So he goes to see a therapist. Well, he's got PTSD. Went to another therapist. He's got PTSD. They sent him to a third therapist. Oh, that's not PTSD. That's just part of the job. I asked him, does the guy still do frontal lobotomies? I mean, for somebody to say that can't be trauma, then they told him, you weren't even there. Well, guess what? The president's photographer happened to catch a picture of him underneath the truck with that guy, with the other officer. They still fired him. That's not right, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Fatalities are particularly tough. When you find somebody hanging in a cell, you might wonder, what could I have done differently? Should I have been checking on them more? You can't always control what people do. You just simply can't. You can try, you can offer help, but you can't make them take the help that you offer. All can likely be catalysts. The Oklahoma bombing, 9/11. I can't imagine what it was like in Newtown. Can you imagine the officers and firefighters that walked into that school and saw all those dead children? I can't begin to imagine. I do know that they still struggle from trauma. Think about the Pulse Club down in Orlando. Can you imagine being the first guy in the door? You hear phones ringing. You hear people moaning because they're not dead yet. You know, or the evidence recovery team that has to go in and get pictures of all the dead people, categorize all of the evidence, bag it and tag it. That's horrible. You know, Katrina, I can't imagine the first responders that were trying to help in that circumstance. Failure to communicate what you're feeling. You know, if your arm's bleeding, normally you'd say, I need some help here, my arm's bleeding. If your heart's bleeding, if your emotions are scarred and you're bleeding inside, Too often we don't say anything. Who knows that you're hurting inside? You do. Does anybody else? Likely not. It's too often that we think, well, somebody should see that I'm not acting right. But you see, it's our responsibility when we're struggling with emotions on the inside to ask for help. All first responders, dispatchers, corrections officers experience traumatic events. Often. It is part of the job to see those things. It's not part of the job to have the emotional turmoil. That we can get you help with. Trauma can be caused by job stress, finances, and administrative issues. We looked at all of those examples up front. It's my contention that all first responders are affected by trauma in some form that may harden emotional response, make them suspicious, cynical, or hardened. Now let me ask you this. What's going to happen if you go to your boss and say, or your supervisor, man, I'm struggling. I need to get some help. Who can I talk to? And he says, suck it up. What's wrong with you? Are you going to go back to him again? No. What if you hear one of the top guys saying, these people with PTSD are sissies? You're not going to ask for help because of being stigmatized. That's wrong. It's categorically wrong. And it's illegal, by the way. It's not a single incident. For what you guys and what police are involved in, it's cumulative. You see stuff all the time, and it adds up. I talked to one highway patrol guy, and he said, it's not like I've seen 2 or 3 fatalities. He said, I've worked more than 100 fatalities. He said, that's a lot of dead people. And he needed to talk to somebody because he finally decided to get some help. Oh, sorry. When you experience trauma, you've heard of the left brain, right brain construct. When you experience trauma, your left brain functions defer to your right brain. And I'll tell you what that means, which is observing and reacting to the immediate threat. It's the fight or flight. It's the left brain which processes details, specifics, and is not reacting to the traumatic event. The left brain has logic, verbal, detail. The right brain, picture, story, shapes, possibilities. When you're facing a trauma, you're not trying to count the hairs on their head. You're not trying to count the squares on their shirt. You're reacting as you have been trained to react. The right hemisphere is intuitive. It's emotional, visual, spatial, and tactical. It's the first to develop in the womb. During trauma and flashbacks, the right side activates and the left side settles down and doesn't activate. Doesn't mean it's not there, but it means that you're in survival mode. When you're in combat, you are facing an enemy. You're trying to neutralize the threat. That's what happens with trauma. The left side is executive functioning, linguistic, sequential, and analytic. We remember, now this is important. It helps us remember facts, statistics, and vocabulary of the event. In a traumatic experience, reaction may be automatic and not recalled clearly because it was not key to survival. I'll give you an example in just a moment. Your memory might be distorted. Tunnel vision, perceptions, it's best to wait 2 sleep cycles to give a statement. If you're involved in a traumatic event, too often when they do a debriefing, they ask you for a statement. It's right after the event. Your adrenaline's still pumping. Well, what this is saying is you're still operating out of your right brain. That's not the time to make a statement. You should wait 2 complete sleep cycles. I'm with the FOP, and our training is if one of our members gets involved in an incident, first thing they do is call us so we can dispatch the lawyer. The second thing we tell them, shut up. Don't say anything. Because when you're all hopped up on adrenaline, you're all in the moment, you might make a statement that isn't right, but it was out of an emotional outburst. Wait 2 sleep cycles. And that's the best way to handle that. This is the example I was going to give you. There was a police officer in Chicago. He was involved in a shooting on the L train. He was called, there was an L train stopped, man with a gun on the train, and had fired a couple of shots. He came up, he sees the guy through the window, he fires a shot, the guy drops, turns out he shot himself, but the police officer thought he shot him. So they do a shooting inquest. They take his gun, and they come up to him, and they ask him, how many shots did you fire? 1. You sure about that? 1 shot. Yes, sir. You're sure? Absolutely. So they sat there with him and they emptied the magazine. He had fired 7 shots. Why didn't he remember that? When you're involved in a shooting, are you going 1, 2? No, you're not. You're trying to neutralize the threat. That's what you're trained to do. You're not trained to count your rounds as you shoot them. And to hold him accountable for not understanding, well, what are you covering up? Why did you shoot 7 rounds? Why did you tell us 1? What are you trying to hide? You see, typically it's from people that haven't been on the street in a number of years. And they have no idea what they're asking this guy. So the point is, wait 2 sleep cycles, because his left brain wasn't counting. His right brain was acting to defend himself and the others around. That's why it's important to wait those 2 sleep cycles. At the time of the incident, you're not using critical thinking skills. You're using survival skills. Remember, if you're not treated after a critical incident, the brain can stay in survival mode. Now, let me say this. A lot of times there are critical incident stress debriefings. Do you get those?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you get them, do they call you 3 weeks later, 6 weeks later to see how you're doing? See, that's the problem. Because if you've encountered a stressful situation and they say, so what did you see? Well, that re-traumatizes you, because then you're thinking about the incident all over again. Well, what did you do? Again, you know, they can talk with you in a group, they can do their debriefing, they can check their box, but if they don't call you 2 or 3 weeks later and say, how's it going? Are you sleeping all right? Are you having any recurring thoughts about this? If they don't do that, how are they going to find out if you're struggling? They're not. It's important to do follow-up with a critical incident stress debriefing. The emphasis is PTSD is a condition, it's an invisible wound, an emotional scar, and this is critical that you know this. It can be changed with proper treatment. It's not something that you get that's permanent. It's not like a disease. It's a temporary situation that can be addressed. We always refer to a trauma specialist. Now, what we do, we have a nonprofit, it's called Serve and Protect, and we have a partner, Safe Call Now. They operate the crisis line. When somebody anywhere in the country, we actually help somebody in Brussels, Belgium, Norway, Ireland, and Canada. But the point being, if somebody calls in and needs help, they'll assess the situation. Is it somebody that's got an addiction issue? Well, if it is, they already have facilities they can refer them to who have been assessed for appropriateness for law enforcement and first responders. Now, if it's not, if they need to talk to a trauma therapist, they refer the information to us. They give us their name, their contact information, and their insurance carrier, and a brief description about what's going on. Then we go to work and we'll find a trauma therapist, somebody that is an actual therapist that treats traumatic incidents, traumatic situations. We locate somebody that does that. Rose that works for us, she's a specialist in that. And she'll find that person. And when she finds a group of people, she starts calling. And she'll ask them, have you ever worked with somebody that's in corrections or somebody that is in law enforcement or a firefighter? If they say no, she keeps looking. Because what happens if you go in and you say, yeah, I'm here to talk about my job. Well, what do you do? Oh, I work in corrections. Huh, what's that like? That's not good. Because if they don't know, how are they going to help you? How do they know what you are facing? How do they know what you struggle with? They simply don't. So we find people that are certified to treat our folks, who have experience with our folks. That's very important, so that when you go in, you know you've got somebody that understands who you are and why you're there. We refer to a couple of different kinds of therapies first. Either rapid resolution, and these are alternative treatments. Our folks don't like to do talk therapy. They don't like to sit down and just talk back and forth about what's going on. Not only that, we don't want to spend a whole lot of time working on this thing. We want it to be microwave therapy. That we want it done quickly. Doesn't always work that way, but rapid resolution is a clinical form of hypnosis. It's been very effective for the people that we've referred to that. EMDR is more prevalent, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. They either get your eyes moving left and right. Now, what are they doing when they're doing that, or tapping you left and right? They're re-engaging both sides of your brain. Because if you're stuck over here in the right brain, still undergoing the trauma, they want to reactivate the left brain that says, it's all right. That's what they're trying to do. A service dog. We have access to service dogs for people with PTSD that maybe the traditional therapy doesn't help, but having that service dog settles them down. Or equine therapy. Just up the road on Brick Church Pike is Healing Glade. Healing Glade has equine therapy. It was started by Jennifer O'Neill. Some of you older guys in here might know who she is. Everybody know who, well, not everybody. The younger guys won't know. But Jennifer O'Neill was an actress. She was in Cosmopolitan magazine more than anybody else. And she started an equine therapy place up there. Loves the people that we work with and veterans, and does special events for them. Recreational therapy. There's a group called Hunting for Heroes that takes people out into the woods, out on camping trips. They sit around the campfire and they talk. And people start opening up because you've got people that understand you sitting around that campfire with you. It's a good process. The first step to healing is admitting the problem. You can deny it all you want, but you know in your heart what you're struggling with. And if you don't say something, whose fault is that? That's right. You got to ask for help. Now, and that comes from admitting the problem. But then, when you get there, if you sit down with a therapist and you go, fix me, they're going to go, can't. Because you have to be engaged. When they ask you a question, you need to answer. You need to participate in the therapy. Addiction with PTSD is self-medication, and there are many ways that you can be addicted. Pornography, gambling, extreme exercising, affairs. There are other means of being addicted to something. The emphasis is that PTSD is a condition. It's an emotional scar. Remember, and I'm repeating this because I want you to remember, it can be changed. But it begins when you make a call. That's to us. But even if you're calling EAP, call EAP, call somebody, ask for help. Call Percy, he'll give you our information. In fact, I've got a box of cards over here. Take one, keep it with you. I use the iceberg imagery. Who remembers the Titanic?
Wasn't around then. Wasn't around then, sorry.
Huh?
Wasn't around then.
Yeah, I understand. For you young folks, maybe you've seen the movie. But the point being, the Titanic, they thought they were steering clear of the iceberg, but they didn't see what was underneath the water. The gouged the side of the boat and brought down the unsinkable Titanic to the bottom. Lots of people died. With PTSD, with the things that you're dealing with, it's not what everybody sees. It's what's beneath the surface. It's what's in your heart. And it leaves the emotional wound untouched if you don't deal with that. So, how do you deal with it? Proper nutrition, exercise, and rest. Just say no to addictive elements. I mean, when you're using addictive elements, when you're self-medicating, that doesn't really solve the problem, and it harms you physically. You've got to learn to rest and relax. Your mind. Get by with a little help from your friends. Joe Cocker said that really well. Your peers. Get appropriate therapy. For me, I'm a Christian. I do a lot of teaching. Romans 12 says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Nobody can be changed unless their mind is changed. No matter what happens. And the soul. Everybody's got a soul. Not everybody has the same belief system that I do. For me, it's learning to trust, it's finding security, strength for tough times, and peace. I'm a chaplain. You couldn't expect anything different out of me, could you? Now, I want you to pay attention to this. This is the law. This is the Americans with Disability Act. Now, it's important because we helped a guy down in a county south of here. He was involved in a shooting. He was a deputy. And they got a call from the dispatcher. It was a woman. Help me, my husband's going to kill me. They dispatched this guy out there, Byron. Byron's backup was 30 minutes away when he arrived, out in the country. So, who had Byron's back? That's right. Byron had to have his own back. He hears the woman scream, help! He runs in through the garage, goes into the kitchen, and there she is. Her husband's got a gun, turns Byron, boom, boom, shot him here and here. Byron returned fire. He got off 4 shots, and he killed the husband. Woman loved him. You saved my life. The governor gave him a medal. He's a hero. Well, if you've been shot, you're not going to turn up for duty again right away, and there is a matter of post-traumatic stress. So, 18 months later, they could not find him a suitable alternative position, light duty. No, we don't have anything. So, he got a letter from the sheriff. Dear Byron, I regret to inform you that your position with our department has been terminated because of, now this is the great part, injuries sustained in the line of duty. So, Byron called and he said, how is this right? I said, do you have a copy of that thing? He said, yeah. Now, somebody turned that letter over to Channel 5. Channel 5 went and met with the sheriff of that department and said, why would you do that? Oh, that was not intended. That was a mistake, and of course we're going to bring him back. Byron went back on duty, on light duty. Now, that's the problem. One of our guys, Donnie Hecox, and I'll use his name because he's on our staff now as one of our peer advocates. When I first met Donnie, he was working for a department in Florida. Donnie had been involved in a fight, and both of his shoulders were, the structure of his shoulder was damaged. And they put him on oxy while he was recovering. He got off of the oxy. Everything was fine. Went back to work, got in another fight. One arm was injured, put him back on oxy. He went into EAP. My shoulder's hurting, they put me on oxy. Can you set me up with an addiction therapist to make sure I don't become addicted? Sure. Next call was to the chief of police. They called Donnie in. They said, oh, we're going to suspend you without pay 2 weeks before Christmas, and he has 6 kids. So he called us. We got him to evoke the Family Emergency Leave Act. We sent him to a treatment center, even though he wasn't addicted, but it saved his job. He came back. We helped him raise some money down there with some churches and local FOP. And the good news is his family had a Christmas. He came back home and was put back on the job. And that worked until the deputy chief that was trying to fire him first got made chief. What do you think happened? Donnie was gone. But he is one of our peer advocates. What if my mental health condition could affect my job performance? Well, you may have a legal right to a reasonable accommodation. How can I get a reasonable accommodation? Ask for it. If something is wrong, if what you have seen inside the corrections facility has got you where you're afraid to go back in there, not because you're weak, but because of the trauma that you've experienced, is there anything I can do administratively? Can you put me somewhere where I don't have to go back in? They have to make a reasonable accommodation for you. Now, what if I'm being harassed because of my condition? You have a right to file under the Americans with Disability Act. You should tell your employer about any harassment. And if you think your rights have been violated, the EEOC, one of the ladies that we helped, worked for a 911 call center south of here. Same county as the guy that got let go because he had been shot in the line of duty. She had hearing issues because of a tumor she had. Well, she asked for an amplified headset. The guy that was her supervisor leaned in and yelled in her ear, "Can you hear me now, dummy?" You think that's bullying? She asked for a different chair. He said, "I'm not going to get you a big chair. Lose some of that fat butt you got going on there." Is that appropriate? No. There were other things that that person did that were a violation not only of her civil rights but her legal rights, and it was wrong. She filed with the EEOC and won. This is what we do. And we just added, you see the group that we serve up there, we just added medical examiners. I'm doing a seminar for them tomorrow. We have a confidential crisis line. Now understand, it's nationwide, it's confidential. If you call us, nobody knows. We don't talk to anybody, we don't report to any department, nobody knows. And these are the things that we can help you get. That's our back office crew. They just wanted you to know about our mobile app. Again, we're going to get into suicide now. It is a clear and present danger. I went through all of the suicides up front just to give you an idea. Every 17 hours, firefighter suicide is skyrocketing. New Orleans police officer, he's involved in a federal investigation. Sometimes people think, you know what? There's no way out. I can't do anything about this. I'm just going to kill myself. Cop killed his wife, his son, and torched the home, then shot himself. NYPD detective shoots himself to death in car parked outside the Brooklyn police station. Do you think he was making a statement? Absolutely. A Secret Service agent. He was having an affair, was afraid he was going to be caught. There was an FBI agent out west in Utah, involved a female. She was involved in a high-profile case. She was on the stand, and she was texting. A juror said, "She's texting somebody." Judge says, "Are you texting?" "No, I'm not." Oops. You just lied to a judge. It would have been better for her to say, "Yes, sir, I'm sorry. Here's my phone." She didn't. She lied. He took her phone. He saw she was texting. She went home, 35 years old, and hung herself. It's only a career. It's not a life. An officer who killed himself was 22-year police veteran. 8 deaths so far in Canada, and that was early on. Arlington police officer under state and federal investigation commits suicide. Assistant police chief. Now this one, many of you may have heard about. This was Fox Lake. Police officer called in, I'm in pursuit of suspects who shot at me. Okay? Everybody responds. They get there, he's laying dead on the ground, his gun's laying over there. A massive manhunt started. Lots of money spent. Helicopters, dogs, cars, local, state, and federal agencies. Everybody looking. A week later, what do they find out? Yeah, he did. And what started coming out was he was in charge of the Explorer post. There was money missing. And some of the explorers said he had been inappropriate with them. So he wasn't the hero that everybody was saying. All these people were mourning him and calling him a hero. He screwed up. Now his wife and son are in trouble as well. Police, a chief shot himself just after being suspended. Fire chief dies by suicide. Chattanooga. His wife wouldn't answer him. He pulled up in front of her house. They were separated and shot himself. More officers die from suicide than shootings and crashes. Just recently, the previous Attorney General, before she left, dropped a report on Chicago police, telling them how bad they are, how brutal they are, how inappropriate they are. What she didn't bring to light in that report was that twice as many Chicago officers commit suicide as the number that are killed in the line of duty. That's a big number. That's horrible. I'm proud of Rose that works with us. I call Rose my little Puerto Rican tornado. She is something else. She went in and met with the FOP in Chicago. They're working with us to get the word out that help is available. We've got an ad running in the FOP magazine. She then went in and talked with EAP. Her husband is a training officer for Chicago PD and was putting cards out. EAP wasn't quite sure they agreed with that. Well, she went in and talked with them, and they agreed that it was a good thing. So Rose is pretty effective. Michigan deputy and wife appears to be murder-suicide. New York police officer found dead in her patrol car. About 4 years ago, there were 4 New York police suicides in 1 week. One of them pulled over on the Long Island Expressway and shot himself. Prison guard, a corrections officer. That one was on duty. Georgia firefighter. She was being bullied. There is no circumstance under which bullying is appropriate. Either on the job, at home, at school, it's just not appropriate. And how many times have you seen reports of children that commit suicide because they were bullied online, on Facebook? It's terrible. This guy, hey, you know what? My man was proud of what he looked like. And he posted, and people made fun of him. And he committed suicide. You know why? They were jealous. They probably had the big old belly going, well, you think you're all that, don't you? A slain guard commits suicide. The co-worker of a slain guard committed suicide. Firefighter. Suicide epidemic hits corrections officers. Now, here is the lie. Don't buy it. When people are considering suicide, my family would be better off without me. Now, the lady who was the 911 dispatcher that got screamed in her ear, Her husband committed suicide south of here. She was in the bathroom. He was in the shower. She was going to get into the shower with him. His children were outside in the living room, and he shot himself. Do you think those kids were better off without their dad? Not at all. They've struggled mightily. In fact, and I can tell you this because she wrote it on Facebook. She was considering killing herself, and she called me, laying on his grave. You know, suicide destroys the family because the kids always wonder, did I do something wrong? You think it's a problem when kids are struggling because mom and dad divorced? Think about when one of them commits suicide. Nobody cares. Is that true? No. There's no way out of my circumstance. It's too terrible. Think about the ones that we just looked at. They were being investigated. They were having problems. The Fox Lake guy. You know what? The worst that would have happened? He'd have gone to jail. But he'd have been alive. He'd have gotten out of jail. It wouldn't have been a life sentence. Now let me back up. There's no hope. You know, folks, there is nothing so bad that there is no hope. There is always hope. And if you can't find it, you call me and I'll help you find hope. I'm 20 minutes away. I'll meet with you, I'll talk with you, and I'll help you find some hope. No one can help me. Is that true? No. But you see, that's the lie people buy. I'd be better off dead. Well, no, you wouldn't. Now, here are some symptoms. Talking about suicide. If you've got peers that are walking around and they're saying, you know what, I don't care about living anymore. This place sucks and it's dragging me down. I'd rather be dead. Don't take that lightly. Listen. Seeking out lethal means. You know, there was a guy that worked with us in Norfolk, and he was a narcotics detective. He was leaving one night and he said, you know, I'm going to go home and kill myself. My girlfriend left me, and one of his buddies said, well, when you do, be sure you use your 44. So he did. There was another guy that I went to high school with, and he called the police one day and he said, my wife committed suicide. And they got over there and she was shot in the back. That was a trick shot, I'm going to tell you that right now. A week later, he committed suicide because he knew what was coming. Preoccupation with death. When people are focused on dying, something's not right. No hope for the future. They're helpless. They just don't see any way out of it. Self-loathing, or self-hatred. They feel worthless. That's all they talk about is how bad they are. Now here's a clear sign. Do you know a good lawyer? I need to get my will together, and you know, I need to pay off some bills and get everything straight. Well, what's going on? No, nothing. I just want to get everything straight. They may just want to get everything straight, or they might be preparing for the end and they don't want to leave anybody with a mess. Self-destructive behavior. Maybe they get out and take risky assignments. Maybe they drive crazy. Some of the time, and this is where the Google, Bing, and Yahoo statistics fail, there are times when police officers are reported killed in the line of duty because it's 3 in the morning and all of a sudden they're pursuing somebody, and they lose control and run into a tree. We had a guy on our department put out he was in pursuit, and he gave a description of the vehicle, and one of my former field training officers, Gary Falls, said, I'm sitting there, he said, I'm coming up on Azalea Garden in Little Creek. I'm sitting here, and there went Farabee. No car in front of him. So Gary called off the pursuit. He was chasing that phantom. Maybe he just needed some excitement. How many times do you hear about a police officer dying in the line of duty because his gun discharged while he was cleaning it. Have you all had firearms training? What do they tell you to do first if you're cleaning your gun? Unload it. So how does a professional that handles a firearm accidentally shoot himself in the head with an unloaded gun? Doesn't happen. But why do departments cover up that stuff? It's because if you're killed in the line of duty, there's a payout for insurance purposes and for pride. Oh, and the last thing on there was a sense of calm. When people are considering suicide, they might have been all hyper and all upset, and all of a sudden, everything's fine. How you doing? I'm doing great. Everything is fine. Not a thing wrong with me. All of a sudden, they have no problems. Yeah, that's not normal. So, here's how we help. Now, certainly, you can talk to your peers. Peer support is a good thing. But why are some people afraid to talk to a peer about a serious issue? They're afraid they might open their mouth, let it slip. Some are suspicious that, well, if we're up for the same promotion, is it possible that they could slip? Well, I mean, he's a great guy, you know, and if you want to pick him, that's great. You just might want to know he beats his wife. Well, would that kill a promotion? Yeah, it would. Now, he didn't mean for it to slip out. Right. But you see, that's why there is suspicion. Now, I'm not saying that's always what happens. I'm not saying peer support's bad, but for appropriate things. If it's something really serious, your first responsibility is to protect yourself. Our peer advocates. Now, what our peer advocates do is when Rose, who is our facilitator, is looking for a therapist, because she interviews everybody that she refers to, it may take 3 or 4 days. She will not give up until she finds that right person. So you're sitting there for 3 or 4 days going, what in the world's going on? When am I going to get some help? We developed our peer advocate system. We've got 5. Everybody is either active or retired law enforcement. And they will talk with you. They will walk through that with you. We'll assign one, and they'll be there for you just to talk with you until you get that therapist lined up. Because it's a lot better having somebody to listen than to be wondering what's going on. Employee assistance programs. I am not saying to you that no employee assistance program is good. I'd be wrong to do that. I'd be wrong to say that no administrators are good to talk with. Too often we've seen problems. Too often we hear about people going to employee assistance, and somehow that word leaks back to administration. So people are afraid. You know what? Even if it's only happened one time in a department and you start hearing about it, rumors like that get going and people get afraid. So what we've told employee assistance programs, we'll be glad to help you out any way we can. If you want to refer to us, that's fine. But please know, it's better for your people to have somebody to talk to than nobody to talk to. We are a safety net that can take care of people that are afraid to call employee assistance. The role of a chaplain. What's the purpose of a chaplain? And I am a chaplain. I'm a chaplain with the FBI. I'm state chaplain for the FOP. It's to listen. It's to listen with your ears and your heart. It's to care. It's to serve. It's called a ministry of presence. A lot of time, you know, just having somebody there that you know cares helps a lot. That's the role of a chaplain. Now, here's the things that we do. It's education. In partnership with Safe Call Now, we do seminars like this and others that we'll do. Tomorrow I'm with the medical examiners. In a couple of weeks I'll be with Hendersonville Fire Department. My partner, Sean Riley, is all over the country doing seminars. This same kind of thing. Facilitation. That's what I've been talking about. We will find you somebody around here that takes your insurance and understands your job. We're not going to put you with somebody that doesn't get you. Restoration. What's the point of sending somebody to therapy? Is that the end? No. It's to get you back where you want to be. It's to restore you to do your job better, more effectively, and without all the struggles that you were encountering. Now, part of what we do is our 360 focus. If somebody goes into residential care, well, their family's all alone. So if they want, we'll assign a chaplain to their family to make sure their needs are met. And if they talk to the facility that they're in, we'll find a therapist so that when they come out, day one, they're ready to talk with a therapist for the continuum of care to be appropriate. Now this is our A-team. Disregard that guy at the top. That's Rose. You've heard me mention her. Dr. Carrie Steiner is our clinical advisor, 13 years Chicago Police, got her doctorate in clinical psychology, and has the First Responders Wellness Center in Wheaton. She gets it. Rob Casal is Rose's husband, 18 years Chicago Police veteran. He's still on the job and is in the training academy. Rich Kelly, retired from Chicago Police, got his doctorate in clinical psychology. Lieutenant Michael DeJesus, that's right, we got Jesus on our team. And Michael was a SWAT commander down in Miami, in that area. He's had all kinds of experience. Donnie Hecox, you heard me mention him. Houston Gas. Houston was involved in a search. They went into a house. They got down to the last room. He turned the doorknob. The guy on the other side shot him in the face with a 12-gauge shotgun. And then, how many are UT fans in here? Remember the national championship team?
Absolutely.
Judd Granzel played on that team. He was a linebacker. And he has a physical fitness program. Remember what I said? Keeping your body in shape is part of emotional wellness. That's our A-team. Now we have a canine unit. That's our canine boys. They keep things straight. They keep it real. Yeah, that's right. They work with the addicts. Our partners, Sean Riley with Safe Call Now. All of these folks, Robert Douglas with the National Police Suicide Foundation, Jennifer O'Neill. Badge of Honor Memorial Foundation is an awesome organization. What they do is when an officer's killed in the line of duty, they contact the department and offer their help in finding every dollar that is available for that family. Because state to state it might be different. They don't want any family of a fallen officer going without every penny they can possibly get. Once again, just in case you forgot it, don't weather the storm alone. You like that symbolism? That's our mobile app. We're confidential, 24/7, and we're part of the family. And that, my friends, is the end. I'll open it up for questions.